Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Herd Coach number two. What's interesting happened here in Alberta, we've had a lot of forest fires, and I'm sure a lot of you, like me, is probably in air quality has been really, really poor. And one of the things when that happens, there's actually, how much the smoke can really affect your eyes and your breathing capacity. And as a herbalist, one of the things I've always tried to do is just find solutions sometimes to just deal with certain situations like that. And actually, I remember last year when I was at the Rockin in August, we had some forest fires, of course, in BC, and we had the same haze, same poor quality issue that was happening throughout a number of days in August. And one of the things that's really critical that can be really helpful for you is first thing is that recognize that your eyes reflect how your liver is feeling and how it's doing. Because in Chinese medicine, the liver is one of the key points of how your eyes feel. So if your eyes are dry, they're itchy, they're burning, those are all things that your liver is kind of going through. So if your eyes are really dry, the liver is showing the same tendency that it's really dry. If your eyes are itchy, then the liver is irritated by different things that are going on. So I remember last year at the car show, so one of the things is that I was meeting up with some friends, and what was interesting is that my eyes were really getting to the point where they were getting really bothered by the smoke and the haze, and I really wanted to spend some time with my friends. So what I did is I kind of stepped away and I just said, I'll be back shortly. So I found a vendor truck that was there. And what I did is I went up to them, and of course they were selling something that I felt would really benefit my eyes. So what I did is I got one of the largest, glasses I can get, or, containers, and it was lemon drinks. So basically, I had those like four or five different, 4 or 5 lemons, I should say, cut in half, squeeze and juice. And so the concentration was really high. So what I did is I started to drink that immediately. And probably within about 5, 10 minutes, my eyes felt 100% better. And that was kind of the nice thing, is that be able to do something sometimes when your body tells you, or it's manifesting a symptom or a sign that's going on, and then you can just find that solution so quickly and just get yourself back on track. And that's what was really nice, because then I was able to enjoy the rest of the evening with my friends. The smoke, the haze didn't bother me. But what it is, by drinking that water and lemon, is basically I purge or allow my liver, who needed something sour, to help filter and cleanse, and indirectly my eyes felt a lot better. So when you think of people who have a lot of allergies, going through, the spring season, sometimes different time of year depending on what it is, water with lemon can play a huge role in helping your eyes feel a lot better when they're feeling really, sensitive to smoke and other things. So the other thing that today I really wanted to talk to you about is the fatigue issue that a lot of us, go through. And just the challenge is what it's like to get up in the morning and get yourself going. So I'm going to talk a bit about sleep, because sleep is such an important factor. And we'll get into it a little bit more at some point, but one of the challenges everybody has usually is about falling asleep. And sometimes some of us can take up to 20 minutes, half hour. I've heard some clients or of mine talk about maybe almost 2 hours. And of course, once you finally do fall asleep, by the time you go to wake up in the morning, you got to get going for your, start your day. It's going to be a huge challenge, because then you didn't sleep at the right time and you're overtired. And of course, first thing that happens as soon as you get up in the morning is just like you're kind of behind the 8 ball, and you're saying to yourself, okay, how am I going to get going? And last video, I talked to you about pH balance and how important that is. So fatigue and tiredness, I mean, this is just one aspect I'm going to just share with you, is that when you get up in the morning, there's 3 things you have to kind of almost give yourself sort of a way to recognize if you had a good sleep or not. So the 3 tips I'm going to say is, look for first, you should always get up and not feeling stiff, tight, sore. And I understand a lot of people, when they work out and train, things like that, those are things that just normally occur. But when it's a consistent problem to try to get up, and some people just have to get into the shower and then of course put on the high heat, and then of course they warm up, that increases their circulation and blood flow, and they start to feel more limber. There's actually something else that's really going on with their system. And believe it or not, that again, like I mentioned about the eyes, the liver is related again to other parts of your body. So the second thing, your mind has to feel refreshed. And a lot of us sometimes just don't feel like our mind just cleaned the slate, or just didn't shut down, and we get up and you just kind of feel we're still dealing with the same things that we dealt with the day before. But the third one that's really critical is that how do your eyes feel when you go to open them? And a lot of times when people just keep hitting the snooze button is because they can't get their eyes to open or stay open. And it's interesting for some of us, I mean, our eyes feel really dry in the morning. Sometimes we have a little bit of a kind of this gunk that we have in the corner of our eyes that takes place, and we just have to try to rub it out. So we're always trying to rub the sleep out of our eyes. So it is a bit of a challenge because when you're sleeping, your blood sugars are a little bit lower than they are when you're awake. So the transition from going from asleep to being fully awake, for some of us, it can be a challenge. Some of us it's very easy. Some of us bounce out of bed. Some of us are just morning people. But again, those who have the challenges, what do you do? So if you're up in the morning and you're just having, like most people, I'm not saying the majority, but a lot of people have a coffee. And coffee can be, kind of a bit of a jolt, just depends on how much caffeine. And it's just amazing, when you think in society, how many people stop by at Starbucks and, second cup and just have, something that's the way they want to start their morning, or this kind of that routine. And I don't, fault anybody for wanting a warm coffee. I think it's, it's a nice beverage itself, but you have to remember caffeine is a stimulant. And caffeine is also a diuretic, which means that the diuretic qualities of, coffee is to expel water out of your system. So in some ways, you're getting a bit of a jolt, which is the caffeine drive itself. So that kind of wakes you up because it stimulates your adrenal glands to raise your blood sugars. And of course, we all hear about this adrenal fatigue and adrenal burnout and exhaustion and all this kind of stuff. So when you overstimulate your adrenal glands by having too many things that are stimulating, then you're going to find at some point that you have to drink more coffee to get the same effect. And you're having energy, but maybe not as long or as sustained as it was before. So caffeine is like everything else. Majority of the things we have for breakfast, it's highly acidic. So I talked about pH, and what I did this time is I wanted to show you really quickly. So I do a little pH test strips. This is just something very simple that you can see. So just kind of one of those ways of, you can check. It's called pH test strips, and it has these languettes. And languettes just means kind of like a little stick. And it's just a fast way with the litmus paper that's just on the end to check your pH first thing in the morning. And the reason to check your pH is because it's probably the easiest and the fastest way to do it, because it only takes about 5 seconds. And what it does, it just lets you know where you're at. So if your body is a bit in a challenged place and you're highly acidic, then probably the best thing to do is just sort of, respect that and say, okay, well, I should change that. And because if I go ahead and be acidic as I am, and then I go have my coffee, then I'm going to exacerbate my system with too much acidity. Like I mentioned on the first video, when you get too acidic, then it compromises how much oxygen your body is actually able to have. And so you're compromising your breathing a little bit. So high acidity has to have a negative impact at some point, because we can do it for a little while, but we can't do it long term. So one of the effects about having high acid levels is because your body has to get rid of this, and it has to neutralize it. And one of the best ways, or one of the ways that it does, I should say, is that it filters its way out through your kidneys and through your bladder. And of course, you urinate, some of the acid residues that your body has created through the caffeine. So by eliminating constantly acidity, then you get to a place where this starts to irritate the lower back, because that's where your kidneys are located. And for a lot of us, we start to feel tightness in our lower back. We start to feel aches and pains, or we get up in the morning and we just feel really almost, sometimes we're like a 60-year-old, 70-year-old. We just can't seem to move the way we'd like to. So I also mentioned that when you become acidic, one of the challenges that we start to pull different minerals out of our system to keep the acidity or buffer it down. And one of those minerals is magnesium. And so when magnesium levels are affected, because magnesium by itself is a really great muscle relaxant. I mean, there's a lot of products on the market that have magnesium. So if you're thinking, I take a multivitamin and it has some magnesium in there, I'm going to let you know, first of all, that it's not going to be of benefit to your lower back or lower back tension, because magnesium is always in conjunction with calcium. So when you go into a health food store and you're looking for a calcium supplement, you're always going to find that calcium is, intermixed with magnesium, because calcium cannot be absorbed properly without magnesium, because then otherwise calcium will calcify, and magnesium allows it to be in a soluble form, so you absorb it a lot better. So one of the things about magnesium as one of those minerals that helps you to just counteract some of the acidity is that magnesium is a natural muscle relaxant. So the beauty about recognizing is that when you get too acidic, we do cause stress on our kidneys, we do cause stress on our lower back, we cause stress throughout our whole system. So when you eliminate a lot of this acidity out of your system, or constantly doing that, at some point your lower back will start to give you more and more problems. And sometimes we think, oh, maybe it's just the way I was sitting, maybe it was just being somewhere, maybe I moved wrong. But sometimes you got to recognize that your diet and harsh acid, and especially diuretics, trying to constantly push water out of your system, causes a lot of dehydration. So one of the things too that is linked to your lower back and high acidity is that when the kidneys start to have trouble or issues going on with them, first thing people start to notice is they start to get knee issues. And when knees start to give you some aches and some pains, and sometimes it could be just the right knee, sometimes it can be the left, or maybe both. But no matter which way your kidneys, unless it's a knee injury where you fell and injured doing some sports, but if it's just something all of a sudden you wake up in the morning, you're walking, you feel like your knee's buckling, or it's starting to ache and it's got a little bit of a swelling or tenderness, that is linked back to your lower back, which is your kidneys, and that links back again to the acidity. So again, it's just trying to filter out this acid. So imagine this. If you have all of this harsh acid, so some of us have experienced sometimes a really major heartburn. And having a heartburn, it's just like, boy, the first thing you want to do is just get rid of that feeling right away. So if you took some of that acid from your stomach and you were able to put it into an eyedropper, that acid is so corrosive that if you put it onto marble slab, it can actually start to eat away through the marble. So if you have acidity permeating through your system because of the diet and some of the things you're doing, then that acid has to be filtered out of your system, and where it needs to go through, because it's in your blood, so it goes again back through the kidneys. And going through the kidneys is like you're scolding them, you're putting too much acid, you're burning them. And Chinese medicine is that the joints, the skeletal system, your spine, everything that has to do with the skeletal structure is related back to the kidneys. So you have to be mindful that, to try to keep that acid down. So one of the first things I would do is, like, I'm not here to scold anybody from having coffee. I think you can have some values, you have some benefits if you really enjoy it, if it's part of your culture and just going out with some friends. But it's when you add the sugar, that adds more acidity. So it's like adding more fuel to the fire. So some of you have heard about, doing these bulletproof coffees. So here's a little tip. If you are adding a little bit of fats or more natural fats, be it with the coconut oil, a lot of people are doing that, MCT, that, at least this way, you've got something that's going into your system to try to find energy to help you rev up and feel more alert really quickly. But when you're adding some MCT oils or a little bit of natural fats to it, then you're going to have something that's actually going to nourish you and not be totally dependent on the caffeine to stimulate you to get you going. And the other thing too is that, when you get up in the morning, to get a little bit more value so that you don't get into a high acidity factor, is that recognize that when you get up, you're always going to be probably a little bit parched or thirsty, because it's usually highly unlikely that you get up in the morning and not want to drink something. So my tip has always been, get up in the morning, get your state into a good balance, start off with a pH value. So if you check on the litmus paper and you find out right away you're at a 5, 5.5, 6, whatever, you're still way too acidic, because ideally the number should be at 7.365, but for technicality, let's just say 7.0. So if you're lower than that, then again, you go back to that compromised place where water is going to be of a challenge for you to absorb. And it's interesting because water is something we're all told to drink a lot of it, and because it's important for hydration. But I believe that from all the years that I've done what I've done, it starts to see people drink too much water. And the factor is that, it's okay to drink water, if you're eating a high salt diet, you're eating a lot of foods that maybe, make you feel warm, or you're in an office where it's really dry, but that's okay. Those you need to compensate. And especially if it's warm outside or very dry. But at the same time, is it always the external factor that causes you to drink more water, or is there something going on inside of you that determines if you're going to get value or not? Because I was sharing with a client also that, hydration comes in two forms. It comes either in the form of a liquid, which is water, or it comes into the form of natural oils. And a lot of us sometimes have issues with dry skin or scaly skin, dry scalp, dry feet, and all those kind of things. So one of the things that you want to be mindful of is, quality of water can be a factor. But if you can change the pH and recognize that we just love our acidic foods. So when you have, eggs for breakfast, toast for breakfast, a little bit of bacon, you have some jam on your toast, you have a muffin, or you're having a coffee, you're having a tea, all those things are going to be acidic, irregardless, unless you're having lots of greens or some kind of vegetables to alkalize that. So convenience-wise, over the years, what I've tried to do is just be mindful that, okay, how can I easily just do something that will help me to power my hydration, because I've gone to bed, slept those 7 to 8 hours, I'm feeling a little bit parched, I really want something that I don't want to guzzle water all morning. So what I've done is I've looked for things that have this alkaline quality that pushes my pH up, and what I do is I just add it to my water, which is something called liquid chlorophyll. And of course, as a herbalist, I mean, there's lots of different products on the market. Some taste a little bit better, some taste a little bit different, some are okay. But what you want to look for is, when you're looking to change your energy in the morning, there are really 4 things that I try to do with my program. Is first thing is keep my pH in a good place, so that my body, my state of where I want to be, my well-being, is constantly healing. Because the challenges we all have about our health is that we're looking to feel better. And a lot of times feeling better is that, if you're on a program that you're taking some multivitamins, vitamin C, vitamin E, B complex, you've got a lot of things that you look at and you say to yourself, this is my program that I believe is going to keep me healthy. But if you have a challenge, so let's just say we go back, you have some knee issues, and we recognize that you're too acidic, and those are coming from your kidneys, and they're aching, and they're giving you lots of problems. You have to you got to put your program aside, because prevention and healing are 2 different things, and sometimes you can actually overdo it. So what that would mean is eliminate or minimize some of the things that you would do for prevention, and put more focus on the healing part. Because when you're not feeling well, you've got your aches and pains and you're struggling, focus on the healing. Once your body is healed and it feels good again, then re-emphasize your prevention program. Because then sometimes if you take too many things, you kind of confuse your body into what direction you should go. And sometimes you could be taking too many things. And for a lot of us, taking a lot of supplements, it just gets overwhelming. So I would encourage you, like I said, if you're challenged with some of the things that you're trying to deal with, simplify it, eliminate the things that you are doing for prevention for a little while, and then focus on getting better. Once you feel better, then you can go back. So alternating between prevention and healing is 2 different things. So just to say about the chlorophyll, about that part is, throughout the day, we're always going to struggle with fatigue. And this, to me, is probably the number 1 malady that exists really in the world. Because if you think about everything that we all do, food-wise, from the coffees and the sugary foods and the salty foods and the energy drinks. We're always trying to drive our energy levels to a better place. And this is the thing, is that we're doing it, but not in a very effective way, but we're also doing it at a cost. And that's what I've always looked for, is what's the cost that we pay for trying to find that natural energy that we'd like to have. So when you get up in the morning, at some point I'm going to talk to you about sleep, because if you could create the kind of quality of sleep that you should have, then at least this way, when you out of 10 lethargic and not feeling your best, and you might be grumpy and irritable and all those kind of things, if you could change that and get up in the morning and be more consistent the way you should feel, then when you go to add value to your program, you're not starting from the basement and trying to feel better. You're just moving from a good place, and you're just enhancing the value of what you're looking for. So as a herbalist, and for me, herbs have almost an incredible value, because all the things that I've studied over the years is just understanding how each herb can help your body heal itself. And it's interesting, because when you think about something like as simple as chamomile, or an herb like called hawthorn, or maybe parsley, is that when you start to read and research, you start to realize is that there's a common denominator. So if you're reading about chamomile, so let's just say as an example, you read 10 books, 8, maybe 9 of those 10 books, you're going to start to realize is that chamomile is really good for stomach issues and digestive problems, and really good to settling colicky babies, and it's good for nausea. But yet parsley doesn't have that value. So it's almost interesting that chamomile is self-directed to go to the stomach and wants to heal that part, where the parsley wants to go to different parts of your body. So I'm always fascinated when I look at products and I look at the combination, because I kind of see the different parts of the body and how the recipes is being put together. Now, herbs that are single, yeah, they do have a very strong effect, and they work directly on one area. But it's just when they're used in combination, that's where for me, there's more value, because there's a complete synergy, because you have to think about your digestion is just as important as your elimination, and your kidney and bladder, as well as your liver and gallbladder, they're just as critical. So one of the companies I've always looked for is I look for products to me that make a difference, because ultimately that's the value. So I'd say probably about 37 years ago, when I started to struggle with fatigue, basically my grandfather was a diabetic. And so it's kind of skips a generation. So what that meant is that my pancreas, my ability to utilize sugars, is really not in the best place. So I was challenged in how certain foods, if I triggered by eating certain things that raised my glucose levels, so in other words, if I had a Slurpee, or if I had something really sweet, if I ate things that really drove a lot of sugar into my system, my pancreas wasn't as strong as maybe somebody else who maybe didn't have diabetes in their family. So at the age of 13, I've already was struggling with blood sugar issues. And at that time, with my parents, basically just says, you might have some issues that, like your grandfather, that was type 2 diabetes. And so being at that age, that was a sort of a little bit of a scare. That was kind of like my beginning of my journey of saying, okay, if I'm struggling with this blood sugar issue, then what's really happening? Because all I knew is that I couldn't seem to get the energy. And it's always interesting, because if you've ever been with someone who is diabetic and you're going for a walk and they are just been with you and you've gone for a couple of blocks, and all of a sudden they start to tell you, you know what, I'm starting to feel a little bit weak, I'm feeling a little bit faint, I feel like I says I might even black out. First thing you start thinking, okay, do I have a candy? Do I have a little chocolate? As soon as you give it to them, right away, boom, instantly, they feel a little bit better. And what happened is, because their blood sugar gone back to a more of a normal level, because if it's too low, then they're definitely going to feel way too tired or exhausted or fatigued. And sometimes when it's a little bit too high, then you can kind of get a little bit the opposite, which is almost kind of like a hyper feeling, which a lot of times kids do have. So blood sugar balance, energy, fatigue is synonymous for me. So my journey from the time I was 13 for probably, let's say, the next 12 years of my life at the beginning was really trying to understand that eating industrial quantities of junk food was not the best thing. And so I had to start to modify and start to learn that certain things really affected my energy level. And that's where it all started. And studying Chinese medicine and different herbs, I was able to integrate different ways to help my body heal. So one of the things I found that's been really helpful for me is a product that I use on a regular basis. And there's lots of great products out there, but I'll share this one, is that one of the products I look for is a couple of things. First, will it help my pH? Will it help my blood sugars, which is, to me, my two most important element? Three, will it actually nourish me? And four, because when you have a health challenge, you do have internal stress. And when you have internal stress, we don't realize it because our body's trying to manifest better energy. Sometimes we're just trying to cope with the stress a little bit better. Sometimes certain things we eat upset our stomach. So if we have all these mild symptoms, we are creating a lot of stress. So for me, using something that keeps me in a place where my blood sugars are more balanced, I have way more consistent energy. And that's the part that most of us, like I said, just can't seem to have. So I'm going to follow up at some point, and I'm going to talk about 3 o'clock fatigue, because 3 o'clock fatigue is synonymous for all of us. And it's interesting that, for so many years, I used to talk to people and just say, when do you feel most tired? Because when you're using supplements, doesn't matter which one it is, the most important part to it is knowing when to take it and how much to take it so that you can create value. So as a quick little example, I'll give you this, is that if I know I'm really tired at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then I have to recognize that something I'm eating at lunchtime is affecting my blood sugars, and that's impeding how I want to feel. And if that's the case, then I have to recognize that I got to make some adjustments. And sometimes, with fatigue, I'm going to cover lots of those areas because there are 9 general areas of fatigue. And digestive fatigue could be one, adrenal burnout could be another one, mental fatigue could be another one, nutritional fatigue. So there's a lot of them to cover. So I'll do that in some of the other videos in the future. But one of the products that I wanted to just get back to and tell you is actually this little packet here I've used, and I've had some incredible value because the product itself helps me to balance my blood sugars. And no matter what, I was born with that weakness. I'll always have a challenge, but I can minimize a lot of the effects by not eating foods that trigger my blood sugars to go up and down. So what I'd love to do is, help anybody that has ever had issues with hypoglycemia, a little bit of diabetes, and I'm sure you all know that diabetes 3 is kind of becoming a little bit more of a bigger factor right now in society. So that's something that needs to be addressed. So if you'd like or be interested in, messaging me, just let me know what your thoughts. I always really do appreciate any feedback on some of the things I do share. But I also would love to offer anybody who's interested maybe a quick evaluation how to help yourself maximize where you need to work on. So I've got a free evaluation we can do. Be happy for you to just, send me a message, or you can connect with me on my email at theherbcoach@gmail.com. So please feel free to do that. And again, just thank you again for coming on board and listening. And I hope this was helpful. And we'll just continue on there. And then, like I said, the next step is I want to talk to you is about my next video is on 3 o'clock fatigue. Thank you.